once when we were growing up, like I say, peanut butter jelly, peanut butter chocolate. That was pretty much it. Maybe peanut butter and marshmallow. Now you put that on a cheeseburger. That's okay. You ever had peanut butter on a pizza? That's cool. I mean, it's so versatile now that you can put it. Now, granted, I am a peanut butter connoisseur. Love the peanut butter on everything. A ton of messages, 35270. Plus, we have people calling into the Laney studio line, 237-594. Okay, they're the Linder truffles is what I'm getting in. And I had to do the quick Google here. And I do believe you're correct. And the Linder milk chocolate truffles. So truffles is what I was looking for. And I appreciate it. You being much more smart than I, texting that into 35270. I didn't go with them. I'm full of regrets, but I know where I can probably get more.
I like it. We got Dan Michaels online now, Tyler. A little traffic update from one of our morning crew members. Hello, Dan.
Hey, good afternoon, fellas. Enjoying listening to you today on KFGO. Say I was just on 25th Street South and south of, into the neighborhoods there past 26th Street on South 25th Street on 26th Avenue, right about there. There is a semi in the southbound lane that is obviously conked out, so he's got his caution things out there behind his truck and whatever. The main problem is it's reducing 25th Street South there around 26th Avenue to one lane, the passing lane.
Very good. Dan, I appreciate that. Is traffic starting to back up by the appearances?
Well, what's been happening from my little foray by there is people are in the right lane going south on 25th Street, and all of a sudden, boom, there's a semi there, and they have to stop and get in the other lane. So as traffic picks up this afternoon, if that truck's not out of there, it's going to be a problem.
All right.
Dan, appreciate it, man. Thanks for calling. Thanks for listening to KFGO in the afternoons. We'll listen to you in the morning.
KFGO is number one.
All day long there. Thanks, Dan Michaels. You can get him. Doug Lear, part of that morning crew. Okay, yes.
So make a move.
Make a move. Move to that left just a little bit. You'll get where you're going. Just slow down. Be mindful that there's an obstruction with a semi that's stalled out, South 25th Street, southbound lane. Okay, I get it. It's Linder truffles, Linder chocolate, whatever. But thank you, because that name doesn't even sound familiar to me, so I was definitely at a disadvantage there. But we got there together. Here's what I want to do. We're going to have a heavy conversation today. I would love to get your thoughts on it. But we are, quite frankly, on head coach watch, I would say today. Yesterday, I said, hey, if you had to pick one day this week, what you're going to have the Minnesota Vikings announce their next head coach, people are betting on it being today. Why? Jim Harbaugh, Michigan head coach currently, former 49er head coach, brought him to the NFC Championship, brought him to the Super Bowl. Remember the Harbaugh Bowl? Oh, yeah. The lights went out. Was that down in Georgia?
It was at Superdome.
The night that the lights went out in Georgia.
Nice. Man. It was New Orleans, but yeah.
Close enough. Anyway, people are saying, look, there's no way you're going to fly Jim Harbaugh to Minneapolis on a day of which you have signing day in Michigan with the Wolverines and not be expected to have some sort of an agreement there. So if that does break between now and 5 o'clock, you keep it locked in right here to Afternoons Live, and we'll tell you about that. But he's not the only person that's in the head coaching world of the NFL that's making news. Yesterday afternoon, we didn't get a chance to really dive into this because it was breaking as the show was going on. But you've got Brian Flores. Now, who is he, you're wondering? He was the head coach down in Miami. He was with the Dolphins for, I believe, 3 years. And of all the coaches that got fired at the end of the regular season, this one took a lot of people, myself included, by surprise. Saying, look, he had winning records. He went 0-7, went 7-7. It didn't make sense. It seemed as though he turned it around. Well, lo and behold, with the revelations of a lawsuit, class action that he filed yesterday as an African-American head coach in the NFL, there was a lot of revelations there. One being that the owner of the Miami Dolphins offered him some side money. Slide this under the table. Just be quiet about this. We don't want anybody to know, but you slide this under the table. Here's $100,000, but I want you to lose this game. And I'll do this for every game you lose so you tank our status so we get better draft picks. Boy, that is so we can start there. How do you keep somebody in an ownership position of the NFL that's trying to pay a head coach to lose games to get better draft picks? That's one issue of many in this whole lawsuit going on. You've got to get rid. You've got to ban owners from that ability. If you a whistleblower coming out doing this, he's got to be gone. the owner of the Miami Dolphins. And now, with that revelation, you've got others that were in a similar situation saying, well, yeah, this was when I was with Cincinnati, some of this was being discussed as well. So if this is the culture in the NFL, this has got to blow things up on that rub. And we haven't even got to the racial part of this, which is the crux of what we're going to be talking about for this first hour, because Brian Flores, as an African-American coach, with the rules that the NFL has established, with the Rooney rules, well, guess what? There was this whole bombshell of a text that came off from Bill Belichick about the New York Giants that involves Brian Flores not getting a fair shot in getting an opportunity to go on and potentially be the head coach of the New York Giants. And people are saying, and that's what this lawsuit is claiming, is it's racially motivated. And my question that I have for you is, do you think it is, or do you fault the Giants? Because I'm curious how many other professions out there now in which you find the candidate that fits what you're looking for, talent-wise, profession-wise, and you want to hire them, but you're going to go through with a couple of other interviews. And that's where the situation, when it just comes to New York and what they did in hiring another Brian, Brian Dablo, the name escapes me right now.
Yeah, it was many Giants coaches ago. Yeah. They're doing their recycling of coaches here for the last 3 years since they fired Shermer. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll look that up on the break. But so the claims are that Flores was just getting flown up to New York to fit the check mark and to check a box saying, okay, well, we did interview somebody who's not part of our organization, that isn't a minority member, that we could check this box. Now we can go ahead and hire who we want in the first place. Let's talk a little bit more about that. You can join the conversation in just a little bit. The Laney studio line open to you at 237-5948. And, of course, iConsults of North Dakota sponsors our text club, which is 35270. Afternoons Live, we're just getting started right here on KFGO. All right, let me reset the stage here for you. If you're just joining us, we're talking about Brian Flores filing a class action lawsuit against the NFL, an African-American coach that was fired from Miami earlier this year. Now, this was the coaching removal that surprised me because, quite frankly, I thought he was doing a pretty dang good job. And that was part of the problem, according to the Miami Dolphins, because they didn't want him to be doing such a good job. They wanted him to tank the season to lose games so they get a better draft pick. That is terrible. But you have a respected coach that you have people across the league saying, you know what, he's got what it takes. He will land somewhere. One of those potential spots was going to be the New York Giants. They had offered an interview to Brian Flores. Now, this is where it gets weird because in the lawsuit, he alleged that, you know what, I received a text message from Bill Belichick, and, he had receipts. He provided the text messages from Bill Belichick, which how Bill Belichick knew about the hiring of a different Brian is a question that I don't know that we've got an answer to. Brian Dabble, if I'm mispronouncing his name. So Brian Belichick sends a text message to Brian Flores saying, congratulations, Brian. Heard you got the job. You're the man in New York. Thanks, Coach. But I'm just landing for the interview, and I'm paraphrasing here.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, do you know something that I don't? Yeah, you're the guy. And then Brian Flores, the coach from Miami, the African-American, and that's important. I know there's some people that are upset that I keep highlighting that, but that plays into this class action lawsuit. Says, hey, Bill, you think you texting the right Brian, which if you've ever been in that moment, your heart sinks. Sending a text message to a wrong individual. It doesn't matter what it says. It's an uncomfortable moment. That is for sure.
Been there, done that.
Yep. And then you look back, and especially when it's like, hey, have a good night, love you. And it's to like a coworker.
The other girlfriend?
That's a whole other story that makes somebody a lot more uncomfortable. Not me, though, because I've never done that, I assure you. But so Bill's like, oh, I blanked this up. You can fill in the blank. You're an adult listening, most of you. So the Giants went ahead and hired, or were going to extend the offer to Bill Dablo, the other Brian, or not Bill, Brian, and they still went forward with the interview with Brian Flores, the African-American coach from Florida. And he's alleging that, you know what, the Giants just wanted to interview me to fit the Rooney Rule, which requires in the NFL that these teams, these organizations go and interview people from outside of their organization that are a minority. African Americans, Latinos, Hispanic, all of that. Our Asian neighbors as well. So he's alleging that New York's just wanted to check off a box. Humiliated. This is a disbelief. Tough pill to swallow are some of the things that Flores said. And I understand because it doesn't take a brain surgeon to look at the landscape of the NFL and the makeup of head coaches right now and people in high-profile situations across this league. So I get the lawsuit, and you've got people saying, this isn't the first this has happened. And I'll take full I'm a Carolina Panthers fan. And there was a coach that came out in 2002 that said this a similar situation that went ahead and extended to John Fox then, another white head coach. So this lawsuit probably is going to cost Brian Flores any opportunity to coach in the league again. It might not, but I suspect it will. Because if you've learned anything, ask John Gruden how tight-knit the league is in protecting their own. But my question, and this is where I sit back and I'm wondering, if it were any other organization, any other place of employment, in which you're out there, you're doing your interviews, and somebody comes in and knocks it out of the park. You're saying, that's our guy, that's our girl, that this person is exactly who we want in this organization. But because of, the way HR works, you have to have a pool of candidates. Do you fault? Are you no longer allowed to hire the individual that fits the role for you in your part of leadership? Because that's kind of that sticky wicket of which we're talking here. The Giants perhaps found the candidate that best suited what they wanted. And yes, it was a white dude and Brian Dabble and not Brian Flores. But my question, and it's not an easy answer, and you can answer at 35270, do you fault the Giants for making the move on somebody that they wanted and still going through with the interview process? Because I think that happens across business all the time. You have to have a pool of candidates. You know what? We'll extend the deadline for people to apply because we have to have up to 15, just picking a random number, people apply and to interview. I don't think that's uncommon. Now, with this Rooney Rule in the NFL, and when you have to check some boxes, that's where the allegations get a little dicey here. But if we're going to go down that to where, you've got to interview every single individual. That doesn't sit well with me as part of a business management, regardless of race. I'm talking about just the general pool of candidates out there. So I don't know that the Giants should be at fault for that, aside from the rule that the NFL established. 35270. Tyler, it's getting to be sad that anybody that is going to be hired has to be black, or else they're going to drag the owner through the mud another 5 years. It'll have to be a woman. Another one comes in. Tyler, every NFL team cheats on the stupid Rooney rule. Giants were just dumb to check the box after they hired somebody. Well, the Rooney rule is the crux. That's the center focus of this entire lawsuit in the way I'm viewing it. Now, the Rooney rule within the organization, I don't know the legalese, how that stands up on the actual legal side. I get that you can have organizations, you have rules, you have the wink and nod, you have the actual bylaws of whatever organization. Does it hold up in court? I don't know. I generally do not have the answer to that. But where I find myself, I understand Flores, because you know what? He's taken the leadership role of something that I think has been discussed in the NFL in particular. Go ahead, throw a label on the back of a helmet all you want, paint the end zone saying end this, no hate. There are still, I think, substantial issues that they need to address within that whole association. So I get it. But I also understand hiring somebody that you want for the job as well. So should the Giants be at fault? That's a question. We'll continue out throughout the day here. Speaking of this whole racial situation, Black History Month started yesterday. It runs the entire month of February. And you have people that are trying to prohibit you from learning about the accuracy of history when it comes to African Americans in America. How do you educate in an era of which they're banning books, prohibiting what you can teach? We're going to talk to an NDSU professor about that right after this KFGO News. I'm Tyler Axis. Stick around.
News and weather this hour brought to you by Bradfield and Equitable Agri-Finance, providing long-term fixed-rate financing to America's farmers and ranchers.
Fargo-Moorhead, mostly sunny and 3 below. I'm Paul Juergens. A Valley City man charged with attempted murder, burglary, and violation of a domestic protection order has been sentenced to just over 6 years in prison. Alex Meridian shot another man last February in Valley City. The victim recovered. The victim asked for leniency, saying he believes Meridian is a good man who made a mistake but needs to undergo mental health treatment. Barnes County State's Attorney Tonya Duffy asked for 8 years in prison. Richfield, Minnesota police have released more information on a fatal shooting at a school. One student was killed. Police Chief Jay Henthorne says it was an isolated event.
The incident involved 5 self-education students. Individuals currently in custody are Fernando Valdez Alvarez, 18 years old, of Minneapolis, Alfredo Rosario Salas, 19 years old, of Minneapolis.
The shooting happened over the lunch hour yesterday on the sidewalk outside the school. 15-year-old Jamari Rice died. Another student, a 17-year-old, remains in critical condition. A 19-year-old student was also hurt. Police have recovered 2 guns. 3 below, this is KFGO News. 3 below zero. This is KFGO News. Fires damaged a home in the Buena Vista Mobile Home Park in Fargo. The fires reported around 3:30 this morning at 4614 San Juan Drive South. Battalion Chief Joe Manchin on scene said one person who was in the mobile home was already outside when firefighters arrived.
First unit in, saw flames coming from the backside of the trailer, pulled the line, quickly put that part of the fire out, the main body of the fire. It looks like we kept most of the fire out of the trailer. Little smoke damage inside. We're not sure if the trailer is going to be habitable or not yet. A trailer house doesn't take much damage of.
Manchin says it is too soon to determine the cause. Fire caused students to evacuate the high school in Miller in eastern South Dakota today. An explosion and fire occurred in the ag workshop. No injuries are reported. An investigation is underway. People living several blocks from the school heard the explosion and saw smoke coming from the roof of the school. A Twin Cities sheriff who was convicted of driving drunk says he won't seek re-election in November. Hennepin County Sheriff Dave Hutchinson has faced calls for his resignation for crashing his county-issued sport utility vehicle in December after drinking at a conference in Alexandria. His blood alcohol content was nearly twice the legal limit. Hutchinson said initially that he had no plans to step down. Hutchinson was convicted of driving while intoxicated and agreed as part of his plea deal to undergo random drug and alcohol testing. He was going 126 miles an hour shortly before he rolled the SUV on I-94. A subsidiary of Bismarck-based MDU Resources Group has completed expansion of a $260 million natural gas pipeline in western North Dakota. State officials have called WBI Energy's North Bakken expansion project a step toward curbing the wasteful flaring of excess gas while increasing state tax revenues by allowing more oil drilling. The line would connect to the Northern Border Pipeline, where the gas would be sent to Iowa, Chicago, and other markets. The U.S. men's national soccer team is playing a World Cup qualifying match against Honduras tonight at Allianz Field in St. Paul. Both teams and fans will brave sub-zero wind chills and single-digit temperatures. The Americans are heavy favorites against Honduras, which has already been eliminated from a spot in the World Cup. Wind chill advisory till 6 this evening, then a wind chill warning until noon tomorrow. Fargo-Moorhead, partly to mostly sunny this afternoon, will be clear overnight. Near 30 below, 7 below tomorrow's high, mostly sunny. For Friday, partly sunny, about 5 degrees for the afternoon high. In the 20s, near 26 Saturday, partly sunny, wind picks up, and there will be a chance of light snow. Sunday, partly sunny and 8. Fargo-Moorhead, mostly sunny, 3 below. Paul Juergens, News Radio, KFGO.
Rusty Halverson appears before us in the KFGO studio.
Yes, sir.
How are you doing, buddy?
Doing well.
Very good to hear.
Yeah.
Got a lot to talk about today.
Oh, there's plenty.
House Ag Committee, they've been working diligently.
Yes.
Perhaps.
Yes.
Isn't it fun watching committee hearings? Say no more.
Well, I'm kind of nerdy about it. I do like it.
You do actually enjoy it.
Yeah, I do. I
Okay,
do.
well, good. You and you alone, I would imagine.
Yeah,
but
makes my job easier. Let's put it that way.
Somebody has got to do it, and who better than you?
Well, what the heck?
What did you learn today?
So, we're gearing up for a new farm bill. The debate will begin in earnest this year as Congress gets ready to write the new farm bill. In the House Ag Committee today, talking about conservation, Title II of the Farm Bill, and just kind of an update on how USDA is doing, what they'd like to see in the future. And ranking member Glenn Thompson of Pennsylvania raised some concerns about the current conversation about conservation among farmers in his area and the ability of NRCS to deliver services and get payments out to farmers and whatnot. And Natural Resources Conservation Service Chief Terry Cosby told Thompson that NRCS staff will be ready to go when Congress approves a new farm bill. Now, Tyler, it's not my place to say it, but when this farm bill debate gets underway, I think the conversation that we have about sustainability, I think the conversation that we have about conservation efforts and whatnot, it's my feeling it may be politicized a little bit in the coming debate.
What? Things become politicized. I know that I say that tongue in cheek because everything has. This one, that it feels like it's coming back to a time in which, because growing up in a farming community, going out hunting and hearing some of the land grab, like those like charged claims, you're already starting to hear some of it, Rusty.
Yeah. One of the things about CRP land, especially when it came to the drought this past year, those CRP acres and the ability to hay those acres, that alone, Zach Ducheneau, there's a lot of sayings in agriculture, and Zach Ducheneau said his father told him that when you've got bales of hay available, that's like money in the bank. And so these CRP acres just alone this past year were very beneficial for a lot of growers out there. So
I'm going to put that on a shirt for you, by the way. There's a lot of sayings in agriculture, Rusty Holvers. Yeah. Well, and this is, we had a bit of this conversation because there's a balance out there. As long as people are being compensated, as long as it's not put into perpetuity. But I think the misnomer, I'm not going to pull into this, is people are thinking that it's forced upon them. That's not necessarily the case. So
true. In fact, farmers, landowners being invited to consider enrolling land in the CRP sign-up that's underway, and we can talk about that more next hour.
I'll save that seed for you.
Okay.
All right, Rusty Alverson, him, Sarah Heinrich, best in the biz. Go to KFGO.com and just click on that agriculture tab. CBS National News on the way. When we come back, we're heading up to NDSU. Going to visit with Dr. Ashley Baggett about teaching race in America. That's next right here on KFGO. February, Black History Month, and you know what? It just started yesterday, and we started off today's show by talking about a lawsuit that came on the NFL side about this very topic, the racial inequalities when it comes to being a head coach. But I'm curious, you've been watching it throughout the last couple of years to where it's amped up a little bit. You have school districts that are trying to impose new rules that, look, if you teach anything negative on U.S. history in the classroom, there might be some repercussions. If you have a book in your library that talks about sexuality or race, guess what? We're pulling it. We're banning the book. So my question is, how do you teach an accurate picture of American history if you're trying to take out some of the pieces that are uncomfortable about it? here to explain that is Dr. up at NDSU, Ashley Baggett, who teaches U.S. history, especially Civil War, Reconstruction, the era of which people are trying to prohibit an accurate teaching of. Dr. Baggett, I appreciate you taking time. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing okay. This is one of those conversations that is being held across the country, and I guess people are trying to prohibit it from happening in the future. And I'm curious, as a teacher, how do you teach an accurate picture of history while trying to soften the edges, so to speak?
Well, part of the problem is when we look at this, a lot of times we want to feel good about what we're learning, and we want the students to feel comfortable. But a key element, any educator from kindergarten all the way to college knows about this really important concept of social and emotional learning. And part of social and emotional learning is the social awareness, self-awareness, responsible decision-making, and relationship skills, which means communication. And so that means being able to understand multiple perspectives and engage in civil conversations. And so when we really teach that, sometimes we are going to have to bring up controversial or challenging subjects. And so that's like a huge component in social science education, where we talk about controversial issues and how do we approach them, and how do we create an atmosphere that's conducive to learning, where students feel comfortable to engage in that conversation.
And there is an effort out there, Doctor, and you've been watching it. You're a teacher and you teach history. Then it seems like a coordinated effort to prohibit the accurate teaching of history. I think about, back not long ago, unfortunately, 1950s era, that where we're trying to prohibit people into a classroom, African Americans in particular, and now we don't even want to teach about that period. I'm just, as a professor, how do you combat that? I mean, is this something that parents need to take a step back? Is this something that school boards need to allow? Because you're on the front lines of this, you've been, educating about it. Have you seen anything like this in the past, I guess is where I'll start.
Oh, absolutely. If we look at the teaching of history and schools of thought, and history has been taught differently over the years, and there are subjects in which it has been taught, such as Reconstruction, incorrectly. And so there's this idea of, we teach a dominant narrative, or we erase an entire population of the United States from the history books. And this is intensely problematic. And I think the main thing that we need to think about is it is a very politicized issue. There's been a lot of studies going on. The American Historical Association just last year did a study in which they surveyed people from all over the spectrum, various races and ethnicities, various political demographics, all that sort of thing. And they found out from this survey, this really intensive survey, that the majority of Americans actually want to learn more when confronted with uncomfortable history. And that was one of the questions. They want to further investigate. And the majority still found it acceptable to teach harm done to others, even if it makes the students uncomfortable. So there is this disconnect that's going on with these pieces of legislation and these bills and public opinion.
This is going to be a rather direct question. Is trying to ban the teaching of racial tensions in the history of the U.S., is that racist?
It's intensely problematic because it is erasing an entire group of Americans. It's history of race. It's the history of gender. Because some schools or some districts are actually trying to ban anything that mentions sexism, and so it is privileging one group over another in terms of history, and saying this is only what history is. History is only about these dominant narratives that make us feel good, and erasing African American history, erasing women's history, LGBTQ plus history. I mean, it literally is saying we have to erase all of that, and saying essentially that identity, those people are unimportant.
Dr. Ashley Baggett, our guest with NDSU, professor of history. And, when we're talking about history of Civil War, all of that, this is the individual of which I've heard a lot of great things about from the classroom. I appreciate you taking some time here. So we're talking about the effort, and it seems as though it's everywhere. I mean, whether it's the critical race theory or just books in general. As an academic, are there efforts to say, aside from coming on a show like this where there's a lot of people listening, saying, no, this is exactly why this book needs to stay in that library. This is why this needs to stay in a history book as well, this era. Are there efforts trying to combat this push to erase, as you said, the teachings of some of this racial part of America?
There absolutely are. The historical profession has given tons of statements, has published, surveys and studies and articles, and experts are coming forth and saying, look, you cannot erase this history. This is history. History's the good and the bad. It's not just what makes us feel good. We have a responsibility to the past to be accurate. That it is a history of all of the United States, not just those groups that we want to showcase or speak about. And so we have to understand that. So if we're going to engage in the present, we have to be able to understand where we came from. So I'll have students, I've taught for, I think, 18, 19 years at this point at various institutions. And I've had students at some institutions not understand some current issues because they had no background in terms of some of these studies like blackface. Why is blackface problematic? They had no idea because they hadn't learned it in their history courses. And that's problematic from even thinking about today and engaging in civil conversation today and current issues. It's not just the past, as they talk about how the past is still with us. It's very much in the present, and it is. And so we have that responsibility.
Doctor, I'm curious, those students that might not have learned, you mentioned blackface, for example, why that's problematic. Once it is introduced to them at the collegiate level, I'm curious, what's the reception from those students that hadn't been introduced to it before?
Generally speaking, sometimes there is pushback because it is uncomfortable sometimes. Why haven't I not learned this before? What does this say? What does this mean for me? What does this mean in terms of how I've understood history? So sometimes there is that pushback. I'll never forget when I was in Louisiana one time, a student actually said, why are we learning this? Why is this important? And I had to basically explain, this is history. It's all of our history. And so sometimes you'll get that pushback. And so I use it as an opportunity to discuss, well, how do we view history and what is history? And why is it making us uncomfortable? Because sometimes we learn if we hold that space where we're uncomfortable, we can learn from that moment.
Doctor, I got a caller that's ready to answer your question. Is that okay if I get John on the line with you?
Sure.
All right. John, thanks for calling Afternoons Live. You have a question for Dr. Baggett?
Yes, I do. In some ways, I'd like to know, how did Germany get it right? I mean, Germany managed to acknowledge, yes, it was our people who created, one of the worst human rights disasters of all time. And, there's nobody ever wanted to, put up statues of Reinhard Heydrich in Germany. You know what I mean? I mean, do you have any insight about how Germany kind of got it right and in a short period of time?
What I would say is, after the Civil War, we had Reconstruction, and there was an attempt to really remake social institutions and social thought and education, everything. And then we all know that Reconstruction was unsuccessful. It was an unfinished revolution, as scholars will call it. And there was this moment of reconciliation and these choices people made of choosing to forget. And in that forgetfulness, that it was comfortable. Let's go ahead and, make up. It really wasn't over slavery. It was over, all these states' rights. It was everybody's right, and we can move forward. And because we allowed for that forgetfulness and we allowed for that reconciliation to be more important than responsibility to our past, it did lead to issues that we're currently facing.
Doctor, I'm out of time. Is there anything you want to get out before I let you go? I appreciate it. This is one of those conversations that has to be had. It's on, you turn on the news, whether it's about the NFL, a talk show host, or a Supreme Court justice, it's on people's minds. But final word goes to you.
I just, I appreciate the moment to talk about it. I think this is really important because, we value, even in North Dakota, every state says they create these learning outcomes for students, and they say, hey, we want empathy. And empathy means the ability to understand and share feelings with another. And part of empathy is to be able to understand these multiple perspectives, diverse populations, and engage with them and collaborate. And so that caring piece is really critical. And so erasing that or removing it from the textbook just because it's uncomfortable is not the solution.
Doctor, I've appreciated your time today. It's been very thorough. You got a lot of compliments coming in the text club. You take care, and we'll chat again soon, all right?
Okay.
All right, thank you. Dr. Ashley Begg, NDSU professor of history, in particular when it comes to Civil War, that whole era that is trying to be erased in part from some of these book bans, from some of just the teaching in the classrooms. I got to get you a weather update from Too Tall Tom Szymanski. We'll wrap up hour number 1 of Afternoons Live next.
All right, right now we're sitting at 3 below. 3 below here at the mighty 790 104.7 KFGO.
About 4 minutes removed at the top of the hour, CBS National Headlines will check in with the KFGO news team as well. I thank Dr. Begg for coming on and having just a rather blunt conversation. Asking if you're trying to eliminate the teachings of the uncomfortable aspects of, racism in America, is that racist? And I think you could say, she said, yes, it is. There was a great question that came into the text club at 35270, the I Consultants of North Dakota text club. I apologize. I did not get this one out because I do find it an interesting question. Tyler, interesting discussion with the history professor, but ask her if she teaches her students that certain races or groups are suppressed today. I don't think many people have problems with learning about the past, but when there is a current thought that some groups are good and some are bad, they lose people. I'm going to push back a little bit about the many people have problems with learning about the past, because that's part of the reason why I wanted to reach out to her, because there are efforts to try to not allow students to learn a more wholesome picture, a more accurate picture of our past and about the past of what she teaches at NDSU when it comes to, the Civil War, Reconstruction, what followed that. And, when she brings up how the Reconstruction has failed. I mean, there's talk that we are still trying to correct that error here in 2022. But when you've got, for example, and I'm trying to pull out which state this is, that you've got Virginia, for example, which they're trying to, and also they're muzzling teachers is what they're trying to do, and they do it in such a broad way to where I think it impacts that teacher in the classroom, generally speaking, because they're saying you can't have anything negative taught about history. So we're just supposed to talk about the positives of the Gettysburg Address, but not talk about what was going on and what led to the address. There's just this infringement on the classroom and the teaching of history, and albeit the racial part of history is troublesome. We'll continue the conversation throughout the day here. You know the studio line is 237-5948, and of course, you can text in as many of you choose to this program. More about having a wife as a librarian. I'll get to all that and more. I got to switch gears just briefly because a lot of you were reaching out last week saying, it's February, right around the corner. What about that CDL change when it comes to February 7th? How about that convoy when it comes to truckers? We're going to have Kelly Craper, a friend of the show, break all of that down and so much more right after this. I'm Tyler Axis. You are listening to 790 AM and 104.7 FM, KFGO. Don't go anywhere. In a little bit, we're going to be talking about the trucking industry. You know, we're big fans of all you drivers out there. About that CDL change, well, that's less than a week away. We'll be visiting with Kelly Crapu about that in just a moment here. Here's what's trending. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame nominees come out. I see Eminem, Lionel Richie. Easy for me to say.
He's not in yet?
No, he's... Was it dancing on, or is it walking on the ceiling?
Dancing on the ceiling.
Dancing on the ceiling. And do you remember the video of I just called to say I love you? Do you remember that video?
I tried not to.
Oh yeah, the sculpture.
Yeah.
That was so spot on with him, even with the hair, it was perfect.
Yeah.
So I got Lionel Richie, Beck, Duran.
They're not in yet?
Nope.
Hungry Like a Wolf isn't in there yet?
They're hungry for a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame place.
My heavens.
Carly Simon, and here's one for you.
Wow.
Dolly Parton.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's some of the nominees.
Well, 9 to 5 was kind of a rock, and it hit the pop chart, so. Yeah.
Not even her best work. 9 to 5.
Hit the pop charts, though.
It did. I mean, I'm not saying I dislike it. I'm just saying it ain't her best work. We're going to switch gears, talk trucking right after this KFGO News.
KFGO News, Fargo-Moorhead, a mostly sunny sky. It's 3 below. I'm Paul Juergens. Valley City man charged with attempted murder, burglary, and violation of a domestic protection order has been sentenced to just over 6 years in prison. Alex Meridian shot another man last February in Valley City. The victim recovered. The victim asked for leniency, saying he believes Meridian is a good man who made a mistake but needs to undergo mental health treatment. Barnes County State's Attorney Tonya Duffy asked for 8 years in prison. Police have not established a motive in a shooting outside a suburban Minneapolis school that left one student dead and another critically injured. The students were shot outside South Education Center in Richfield. Police have arrested 2 suspects who police say were part of a fight between 5 students. A 15-year-old student was killed and a 17-year-old student was critically injured. A 3rd student was hurt. The parents of a University of Missouri student from Minnesota are suing a fraternity after their son suffered serious brain injuries during a pledge party. Daniel Santulli's blood alcohol content was more than 6 times the limit of driving when he was found unresponsive in a car at a hospital. The parents' lawsuit says Santulli, who is from Eden Prairie, remains unresponsive with a significant brain injury. It claims that pledges at the fraternity were expected to drink a full bottle of alcohol as part of a fraternity tradition. Hennepin County Sheriff Dave Hutchinson has decided not to run for another term in November.
Hutchinson came under fire after being arrested and charged with DWI in December after rolling his county-issued vehicle on I-94 near Alexandria. While initially admitting his involvement, the investigation showed there was an open container in his vehicle and that Hutchinson had been driving more than 120 miles per hour just before the crash. He also denied he was the driver, even though nobody else was around. Some have called for Hutchinson's resignation, but he announced that he refuses to be pushed out by, quote, political figures with alternative motives.
That's reporter Laura Oakes. Fargo-Moorhead wind chill advisory until 6, and then a wind chill warning until midday tomorrow. Here tonight, Fargo-Moorhead, we look for an overnight low of about 30 below zero. Light and variable wind. Wind chills running near 40 below at times. Then tomorrow, mostly sunny, high of only 7 below. Friday, 5 above, partly sunny. Near 26, partly sunny for Saturday. Wind picks up, chance of light snow, 8 degrees. Sunday, partly sunny. Mostly sunny, 3 below. Paul Juergens, News Radio, KFGO.
See, this is what I enjoy when I have friends like Kelly Crapu come back in and we talk about a specific industry. You get to play all the hits of that.
Some
trucking.
Fantastic music.
It was.
I like it.
I tip my cap to Derek Hansen filling in back there. Good job, Derek.
Love the Dead.
Welcome back. It's been a while.
Yeah, thanks. Seems like it was just yesterday, but it's been a while.
Yeah, it has. It's been, and here's how I know it's been a while, because I was visiting with our farm and ranch guy, must have been about 2 weeks ago. And it was about something very specific. I don't recall what it was. But somebody had texted it back in, and it had just went way over my head. I didn't catch on to what they're saying, and then they reminded me of a conversation you and I had like a month ago, It's like, it's about the CDL change in February. Wake up, they yelled at me. So I woke up and I called you. So that,
there you go.
So thanks for the person that
jogged your memory,
chewing my butt for not remembering, because that's why I mean it's been so long. So there's a lot to get caught up on.
It is, and I have had some conversation with the farm and ranch folks due to the CDL mandate at the border, at the north border, going into Canada. U.S. drivers have to be vaccinated to go into Canada, vice versa. I think it was the 15th of January for the U.S., the 22nd for Canada. And then Canada also has to let their own drivers back in if they're not vaccinated. They have to have a 14-day quarantine time. Like, it's all very convoluted.
Yeah.
But I don't think what people realize is that about 50% of fertilizer that comes from the U.S. comes from Canada. And if you're gonna diminish the pool of drivers that can go to and fro, we are not going to get some fertilizer. And those of us in Minnesota and North Dakota, we need that for our farms and ranches.
And those costs are already going up. Now, if you start limiting supply, you can do the math there if you did Econ 101, or if you just had basic math skills, which sometimes is not my strong suit.
Yeah, math isn't my deal either.
No, I'm talking. I'm not very good at that either.
Well, no, I would disagree.
Okay.
And I like to talk too, Tyler. So it's good. So we don't need to be good at math, but we can deduct that if there's going to be some issues at the border, that obviously that's going to cost more for you and I at the end of the day, and our pocketbooks are going to be affected as well.
Well, and like I said, those input costs is on a lot of people's minds. Let's talk about that before we get into the CDL specifics, because people are saying, Tyler, why aren't you talking about this convoy? Whether it was on the Canadian side or I think there was some from Fargo going up to Pembina, but I think the last I had seen was a photo of a listener, and there was like 5. I'm not trying to diminish. I'm just saying people wanted to talk about this convoy.
Well, and the convoy was pretty big in Canada. Obviously, I think it was like 50,000 trucks or something. They're fighting, or they're protesting the mandate. Obviously, both coming in and out of Canada. I think, unfortunately, there was some bad apples as well that, caused some damage in Canada. That wasn't the way that thing was supposed to happen. I think it was supposed to be more of a peaceful protest for the most part. The problem with any of those U.S. truckers that wanted to join the convoy, if they're not vaccinated,
they're not going.
Can't go in, so you can't play in the party. So there's that. There is talk. Just some rumblings of a U.S. convoy protest. I've heard March, but this is a pretty low level at this point that I know of. But yeah, it was a pretty well attended convoy in Canada. And hats off for them for those of truckers who kept it peaceful, obviously.
Right. It's
but they're absolutely, and I understand. Part of me, I think we've talked about this before. The only issue with the vaccine mandate that I have, and it's very political, obviously, one way or the other. I don't care. I think what I struggle with is during the pandemic, before the vaccine was out, truck drivers were needed to get us hand sanitizers, cleaners, water, food, all of that. And they were truly the unsung heroes of the pandemic. And now suddenly we're making it a lot harder for them to do their jobs. So I think that's where I'm struggling. It's a kind of a double-edged sword.
Yeah. Well, and I recall those days when this was all brand new 2 years ago, when we were trying to organize getting people out to the way station on I-94. So, you know what, lunch is on us type thing.
Yep.
And when it comes to on the Canadian side, I thought I had seen a statistic, and I'll have to fact check myself on this here. I do that at 4:00, fact checker at 4. I'll look this one up in particular, but I think like 90% of truck drivers in Canada have been vaccinated. Do we have a stat
I don't
in
know
America?
that. Well, I've heard rough estimates here in the States, about 25 to 30% of truck drivers are vaccinated. So a little bit lower. Yeah. Okay. I think because Trudeau was a little bit stricter on what happens in Canada than here. So the numbers amongst the trucking industry is fairly low. 25 to 30% is kind of what I've heard from ATA, American Trucking Association.
And that's the first number I've heard. So I'm not surprised that it's lower, because, like you say, I mean, they were much more strict in Canada, much more strict elsewhere.
Yep.
A lot of people listening to me right now saying, well, it was pretty tough here too. Not quite to the level of which was elsewhere. Okay, let's stop.
And think about, too, though, the other thing that I'm like, well, what is the exposure rate of a truck driver? How much time do they spend in their truck by themselves? a great deal of it.
Right.
They might have some exposure if they're going in to get a
Fueling
sandwich or something like that, or even deliveries. If you're picking up at a dock or a shipper or a receiver, there might be some exposure there, but it's pretty minimal, in my opinion.
Sure. We'll switch gears here.
All right.
CDL, that's the reason, because that's 5 days away.
Yeah.
And there's people saying, as you're pointing out, we have a shortage in drivers for a variety of things. You think about milk, you think about all this. Can't find drivers. Buses. Well, now we're trying to change when it comes to the requirements, the training. People are saying this is poorly timed out. I think Representative Dusty Johnson in South Dakota is one saying that as well. What's the latest on this change coming up?
Well, and you're right. And I think I've spoke of this before. The entry-level driver training regulation at its core is a super amazing regulation. I don't disagree with it. It's just unfortunate that we're 80,000 drivers short right now in the United States, and now we're putting another mandate in that's going to make it even harder for those people who would like to get an endorsement and or a different driver's license, either obtain a Class A or B for the first time, or if they're upgrading from a B to an A, we're going to make it a little bit more difficult. So the timing is terrible, is really at what we're saying. The rule itself is good. It's just who could have thought that a pandemic would happen, and now we have all these supply chain issues and all of that good stuff. Timing is very poor.
Yeah, well, and who would have thought that 2 years in, that would still be where we are with all this as well. Is there any hope at 5 days? You're shaking heads, so
no.
that there's no hope. It's going to happen.
I don't see that is going to be put off by the FMCSA anymore. I think come February 7th, we have to figure out what we're going to do.
Okay.
The National Registry of Trainers has been published. There are 30 training trainers on the training registry as of probably about a month ago. The problem is people are like, oh, it's 30 people, Kelly. That's tons of people. Well, of those 30, only about 18 of them are public. So you might have ABC Trucking Company that has their own trainer, but they're not going to allow somebody to come off of the street. They're going to train their drivers that are already hired within their company. So if I'm a Class B driver driving for ABC Trucking Company and I want to get a Class A, if they have a trainer that's on the training registry, I can go to them.
Mm-hmm.
But if you take somebody like, let's just say, Joe Olson, for example, wants to get his Class A, he's going to have to find someone that's a public person to train him here in the Fargo-Moorhead area. And in the Fargo-Moorhead area, there's probably 4, maybe 5.
I was going to ask how many. Okay. Because when we think about workforce shortage
8 or
across
10,
the board.
12, 15, maybe statewide. So
That's not
where
a lot.
there isn't. And the cost.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends on where you're going, what the cost will be. So I talked to a company that's, I think they're out of I can't remember, Kansas, and it's a father-son duo, and they will come to Fargo, but you have to provide the facility, you have to provide the truck, and they'll provide the training. But so let's just say their base cost is $2,500. So they're going to charge you $2,500 to train your driver, plus all of their lodging,
Right.
and travel expenses to get here. And then if they're here for 10 to 12 days, that can be very expensive. So you're probably looking at $5,000.
That adds up. And so now I'm getting into the weeds here. $2,500 per driver. Yeah. So you think if you're trying to get a fleet, because with the shortage we have here,
correct,
and then multiply that. One way, stick around. Because we talked about 21 and under.
Yep.
That pilot program where we're trying to fill these jobs. Let's talk about the latest on that, all right?
Perfect.
Kelly Crapo, our guest. We're talking trucking industry. Your thoughts can be sent in to the iConsultants of North Dakota Text Club. It's simple. Just text into 35270. You got it locked into KFGO Fargo. Stick around. It was sent in, Kelly, so I'm going to throw it your way. Oh, usually helps with the mic on. Now, give that a test. Mic check go. 1, 2. Yeah, there we go.
Got it.
Loud and clear. Tyler, so supply and demand. We drivers should be able to ask for more of everything, right? Check, it says. You want to address that one?
Well, of course. Of course, I'm pro driver. I know the daily grind that drivers face day in and day out. I mean, I don't obviously do it. I have, but I don't any longer. You should be able to ask for anything. Yes and no, obviously. You can ask for whatever you want. Whatever you're going to get depends on where you're going to go. But really, truck drivers right now, if you see signing bonuses right now, they're out of this world crazy. If you want to switch employers and the grass looks a little greener on the other side, you do have sign-on bonuses. I'm a proponent for you're going to have to pay drivers more if you're going to retain them. Obviously, retention is the important thing. And obviously, just not always throwing money at people. That's not always going to, win the war. But if you're going to pay people, good people for what their worth is, and then also keep them through other benefits, maybe shorter routes, more home time, PTO, paid medical benefits, things like that. I think that's what avenue a lot of motor carriers are going to have to take if they want to retain their drivers.
I'm glad you threw that out there because, we think about the signing bonuses, we think about the dollar per hour some of these drivers are getting, but that's not always. I mean, if anything that I learned over the course of this last 2 years when it comes to the workforce, they're taking I think they took a step back and said, I just, I want to have a little bit more time for me, for my family, for my friends, just a lifestyle that's not just the grind, whether that's behind the wheel of a truck, behind a computer, in a shop somewhere. I mean, everybody just wants some downtime, and I don't fault them for that.
Yep.
I think that's one thing that if this industry, so if you're not driving from Fargo to Frisco, on a route, then you can sleep in your own bed more often.
Exactly. And I think that's where you have to be creative as a motor carrier or as a truck, a trucking company is, how can I get my drivers home more? Or maybe they don't necessarily want more home time. Maybe they want to go out for 3 weeks, but then have 2 weeks off. Or, some drivers will want to be out for 3 days and come home for a couple of days. I think you have to work with your employees and see what fits for them and what benefits they would like. And again, you say that works for any career or industry at this time. Those of us who work at an office, there are days that you're like, I just want to work from home just to kind of chill and not be interrupted and get more work done. Knowing what your employees bring to the table and maybe knowing your employees, having a conversation, what do you like to do in your off time? Oh, you like to fish? Well, maybe instead of giving them a $500 bonus, you're going to give them a fishing trip or, a new fishing rod, something like that. I think in all industries, we have to figure out what works for employees. And I think there's a shift maybe in just the workforce. Like I think, baby boomers, and I'm not a baby boomer, but, my folks were, and figuring out that it's not all about working from 8 to 8 and giving everything to the man, so to speak. Mm-hmm. I mean, we desire to interact with our children and grandchildren and friends and family beyond just work.
Right. Yeah, I got in trouble for talking about boomers once, being a millennial myself. Not by choice, of course. We don't get to choose.
Right.
I'm that latter part of the millennials. I'm that crossover between, was it Gen Z? I'm looking at you, Derek.
Yeah, you're half millennial, Gen Z.
Yeah. Somewhere there.
Derek, you got to be a Z, aren't you?
I'm an X.
Oh, am I too? How old are you?
I'm 49 almost.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'll let
Just
you two
I'm
work
teasing,
that out amongst yourselves.
I think I might be X, too. I don't know. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, you should be. I've known you for a while.
Easy. Just kidding. Again, it's just all perspective. Yeah, we're good. I'm 28. Let's be real.
For here on out.
So you were really young when I met you 26 years ago.
Hey, now, stop it.
Hey, speaking of 20-year-olds in that era of 20 and so 21-year-olds, there was a pilot program. I've only got 2 minutes left in this half hour.
Yeah. So it's under 21-year-olds.
Under 21.
So it's this is a controversial topic as well. So the FMCSA has put out a pilot program that would allow under 21-year-olds to cross state lines. As the current regulation is you have to be 21 to cross state lines. The pilot program, super infantile stages. It's barely rolled out. The problem is there's lots of people that think that putting an 18-year-old in a 80,000-pound semi is super dangerous, which that could be argued. But we also know that there's mature 18, 19, 20-year-olds that could. it's coming, and
I
I
was
think
not one of those 18-year-olds. I'll admit that right now. You did not want me there.
See, and I think I'm hoping that these young adults can figure that out maybe for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
There is a program coming to help with driver shortage. Is this the right avenue? We don't know that yet because it's still pending. So it's going to be out for 3 years, and then the FMCSA is going to do some evaluating and see if that's something that we want to continue on with. Very infantile stages. We're a little bit concerned about how we're going to get these young folks insured. That's going to be the first issue. But at least the FMCSA is reaching out an olive branch to the industry saying, we understand, we see that there's a problem here. Here's our first solution.
Well, that's why it's a pilot project, so we'll figure out all the kinks and try to work it out before this becomes the standard, is I think how we got that.
Yep.
Kelly, got more time for me?
Yeah.
Very good. Kelly Kirkboom, I guess we're talking about the trucking history. Here's what I want to talk about. Milk. Not about the actual product, but about getting it to the classroom, because that's one of those things. And bus drivers as well, because, I mean, as is everything, there's a shortage of workforce. How do you do this, and how do you just get product or students from where they are? All that coming up. If you have a question, you have a comment, 35270. It's the Eye Consultants of North Dakota Text Club. You want to call? That's cool. Laney studio line open to you all day at 237-5948 or toll free, which is 1-800-880-5346. Going to continue this conversation for a little while longer. We'll talk a little bit more about your comments about our last guest as well. I'm Tyler Axis. You are listening to Afternoons Live right here on KFGO.
KFGO News, Fargo-Moorhead, mostly sunny, 2 below zero. I'm Paul Juergens. KFGO News correspondent Bill Werner of the Capitol in St. Paul says crime was the top issue as Governor Walz and Republican leaders squared off today for a start of this legislative session forum.
Senate Republican Majority Leader Jeremy Miller says crime prevention is great, but first, crime has to be under control.
People are getting robbed. Carjackings are a regular occurrence right now. Innocent people are getting shot. What we need to do right now is get tough on crime.
Governor Walz agrees it's what he calls a triage situation, but adds,
I heard from those school leaders, people setting their grieving today is what are the things that will stop this from happening too? And I think you have to do those simultaneously. I don't think we're talking past each other.
A Republican-controlled South Dakota House committee has decided not to consider a bill from Governor Kristi Noem that would ban nearly all abortions. It's a major setback to a top item on the Republican governor's agenda. It would have been similar to the private enforcement of a Texas law and banned abortions once medical professionals can detect fetal cardiac activity. But it quickly met resistance when lawmakers on the House State Affairs Committee refused to give it a hearing. Lawmakers said Noem's proposal could jeopardize other legal battles between the state and Planned Parenthood. 2 below, this is KFGO News. 2 below. This is KFGO News. Richfield, Minnesota police have released more information on a fatal shooting in a school. 1 student was killed. Police Chief Jay Henthorne says it was an isolated event involving 5 students.
The incident involved 5 self-education students. Individuals currently in custody are Fernando Valdez Alvarez, 18 years old, of Minneapolis, Alfredo Rosario Salas, 19 years old, of Minneapolis.
The shooting happened over the lunch hour yesterday on the sidewalk outside the school. 15-year-old Jamari Rice died. Another student, a 17-year-old, remains in critical condition. A 19-year-old student was also hurt. Police have recovered 2 guns. A fire caused students to evacuate the high school in Miller in eastern South Dakota today. An explosion and fire occurred in the agriculture workshop. No injuries were reported. A Twin Cities sheriff who was convicted of drunken driving says he won't seek re-election in November. Hennepin County Sheriff Dave Hutchinson has faced calls for his resignation for crashing his county-owned SUV in December after drinking at a conference in Alexandria. His blood alcohol content was nearly twice the legal limit. Hutchinson said initially that he had no plans to step down. Hutchinson was convicted of driving while intoxicated and agreed as part of his plea deal to undergo random drug and alcohol testing. He was going 126 miles an hour shortly before he rolled the SUV on I-94. The trial of 3 former Minneapolis police officers charged with violating George Floyd's rights was abruptly delayed after one of the defendants tested positive for COVID-19. The judge says the court is in recess until Monday. The officer who tested positive was not named by the court. A subsidiary of Bismarck-based MDU Resources Group has completed expansion of a $260 million natural gas pipeline in western North Dakota. State officials have called WBI Energy's North Bakken expansion project a step toward curbing the wasteful flaring of excess gas while allowing state tax revenues by allowing more drilling. The line would connect to the Northern Border Pipeline, where the gas would be sent to Iowa, Chicago, and other markets. Wind chill advisory will be replaced with a wind chill warning at 6 this evening. It'll be in effect until noon tomorrow. Partly to mostly sunny this afternoon. Fargo-Moorhead will remain below 0. We are at 2 below now, dropping to about 30 below overnight, a clear sky. Mostly sunny, 7 below tomorrow's high. Friday, about 5 degrees, partly sunny. Near 26 Saturday, partly sunny. A windy day, though, with a chance of light snow. And Sunday, partly sunny, near 8. Fargo-Moorhead, mostly sunny. Again, it's 2 below 0. Paul Juergens, News Radio, KFGO.
Rusty Halverson back in the cave.
Sir.
Just as
yes,
promised,
sir.
I'd save you a spot here.
You
man.
betcha. Thank you.
We were talking last hour about how thrilling it is for you to sit and watch those House Egg Committee meetings.
Absolutely. Love it.
I can tell you're a man of your word, too.
I get into it, man.
Truthful, yes.
Yeah, I get into it. Yep.
And so we're talking about conservation, obviously the topic at hand for a lot of people. They opened it up on January 31st, so 2 days ago. Have till March, but what's the latest on some of the other work here?
Yeah. So we're talking about Title II of the Farm Bill, conservation, and as you mentioned, Tyler, the general CRP sign-up is now underway. It runs until March 11th, and the grassland CRP sign-up will run from April 4th to May 13th. Now, during that hearing earlier today, hosted by the House Ag Committee, South Dakota Representative Dusty Johnson posed a question about what he called a failure to launch for the grassland CRP sign-up to Farm Service Agency Administrator Zach Ducheneau. And Zach Ducheneau is from South Dakota. He knows all about some of those underserved areas, especially in South Dakota, in his words, Indian country, and being able to serve those folks better. And in fact, 2.5 million acres was the CRP grassland sign-up last year, and that was the largest in history.
I'm not going to ask you to weigh in for Representative Johnson, but if that's the largest in history, I'm confused on how it's failure to launch in this program?
Perhaps they were hopeful for more.
More, okay.
Yep.
More. We want not only the best ever, we want the bestest best ever.
Yeah.
They're setting the bar high is what I'm getting at. Because,
Yep.
I mean, take the success of what it was is where I'm at. But
Yep. And under current law, CRP, we've got a cap at 25.5 million acres. Currently, 22.1 million acres are enrolled. So there is room for improvement, perhaps.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate the rundown there.
Yeah.
Anything else before I let you go? Enjoy the rest of your day.
No.
More egg hearings? Or is that where you're going to take you to 5 o'clock?
Yeah. I've got stuff to do, yeah.
Okay. I won't ask. Say no more.
Okay.
I appreciate your time, man, as
You
always.
bet. You bet.
Rusty Halverson, KFGO.com. Him and Sarah Heinrich, you can find their work right there. When we come back, Kelly Crapo, a lot of messages coming in, so be ready. We got listeners out there, all right? I'm Tyler Axis. Stick around. Kelly Crapo, my guest, our go-to when we want to talk about trucking and all your truck drivers that are listening to us here on KFGO. Thanks for the work you do. Thank you for spending some time with us, Kelly.
No problem.
You got them worked up in the text club. You ready?
Oh, gosh.
They're asking questions. No, it's all good.
Okay, good.
Well, we'll just let you figure out the answers.
got
You
it.
got all the answers,
I got
right?
broad shoulders, and I got an answer.
All
for
right, here's
everything.
one for you. Tyler, we're a small family farm on the Minnesota-South Dakota border. We have been able to keep only CDL licensed drivers in our semis, but there's no way we can afford it going forward. I'm at a loss. I'm not sure that there's a question in there, but I'm curious with that situation, what would you advise?
Or a statement, yes. Okay, so actually, as I've had time to ruminate this a little bit, it's twofold. So if you do need a CDL driver, I don't know if everybody knows this, but farmers are exempt from most trucking regulations as long as they stay within 150 air miles of their farm. So I like to refer to that as in their bubble. So this farming operation that this person talks about, as long as you're staying within your 150 air mile bubble of your farm, you don't need a CDL driver in that semi-truck. So that would be my first line of defense, is that farmers are exempt from most trucking regulations during planting and harvesting season, which in North Dakota and Minnesota is January 1 through December 31st, so year round. So you could use that exemption or, exemption to regulation to run your family farm or your farm. The other thing that I would say is if you have to get product past your 150 or product in from past the 150, you're going to have to contract that out. So you're going to have to put a pen to paper and figure out, is it cheaper for me to keep a CDL driver on payroll at the farm, or contract that out? So you're thinking about things like, how am I going to, license my truck and trailer? How am I keeping track of my logs? How, logbooks, time cards. Is it going to be cheaper for me to keep that internally and try to keep a CDL in there, or contract that out? So you have to look at the cost of keeping a CDL driver on your family farm or contracting it out.
Very good.
Couple of options.
There's options. There's 3 that I think you just delivered right there. Another one. What are the details on potential truck drivers needing to spend $2,000 on a class before they get their CDL?
That is the new entry-level driver training regulation that's going into effect on February 7th. Something that has been on my radar for a few years, because the regulation did go into effect. The law passed actually it's like almost 4 years ago. The FMCSA put an additional 2 years. They put it off, and a few days from now is when it goes into effect. So currently, if you want to get a Class A driver's license, you go down to your local DMV, you take a knowledge-based test, they give you a pass, then you get into a truck with a driver who already has a Class A. You drive around with them for a little bit, you feel comfortable, you go back to the DMV and you take the behind the wheel test, and then ta-da, you have a Class A driver's license. Now, if you do not have a Class A driver's license, you can't just go to your DMV anymore. You have to go through classroom training or theory-based training and behind the wheel. 2 separate courses that you'll have to get a certificate and pass the test for. And you have to take these certificates, and I'm using these certificates kind of as loosely, but you have to show that you went through the classroom training and the behind the wheel training to your state driver's license agency before they're even going to let you take the test to get the permit.
How much does that add to time?
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking weeks.
Could be. So I asked, there's a company here in town that I talked to that is on the training registry. And I asked them, how long are you intending for drivers to take to go through the behind the wheel and the classroom-based training? And he said it depends. Of course, it depends on, is this person green, as green can be, never been around a truck, knows nothing about a truck or trucking? He said you could take about 10 to 12 days to get that person through. If somebody has a little bit of knowledge of trucks, has been around trucks, can answer some of those questions, that might take them 3 to 5 days. Okay. So it just is going to depend on how much experience you have.
3 to 5 in the business world, still a long time, but not as much as what I thought it would be.
Yep. It's not horrible.
No, it's still.
But the cost associated is the other thing. So that's time, obviously, is money, and then obviously you're going to have to pay for the classroom and the behind the wheel training.
Are potential employers willing to cover that cost on the back end?
It will depend. So let's say you're already hired on, or you're driving truck for XYZ trucking company, and you have a Class B driver's license and you want to go to a Class A. Most companies, if they have the trainer in-house, they'll train you at no cost. Or some truck driving companies will pay for you to go to that school or the classroom and behind the wheel training on their dime, simply to retain you as an employee and to enhance your driver's license from a B to an A. So this regulation applies to those drivers who are going from a Class B to a Class A, anyone that's obtaining a Class B or Class A for the first time, and then anyone that wants to get a school bus, passenger, or hazmat endorsement. So the classroom and behind the wheel will apply to those peoples.
Okay. A lot of messages coming in. What if you have a permit?
Good question. So if you have a permit, your permit is typically good for 1 year. So myself, I went and got my permit a couple months ago. My permit is good from 1 year from the time that I got it. I think I got it in November. So from November of 21 to November of 22, my permit's good for that year. Those new CDL rules will not apply to me as long as I have a permit prior to February 7th, 2022. So
5 days.
Hurry,
yes.
get out there and get that. The problem is the state of North Dakota is about 10 and a half days out to schedule a test to take your permit. To get your knowledge base.
Boys and girls.
Minnesota, however, you can, as long as you have your medical card. I just walked into the Detroit Lakes Testing Center and was able to do the knowledge test there. I had to wait in line for an hour or so, but was able to get in pretty quickly.
I'm not trying to take cheap shots at any side of this river of which we're sitting on. But this seems like one of the first times that Minnesota's ahead in a shorter delay than on North Dakota.
Amen. I am a Minnesota girl through and through. That is where my heart lies. But this is probably the one time in a long time in my industry that Minnesota is outshining North Dakota. Normally it's the other way around. And don't get me wrong, I love both sides of the river. However,
only North Dakota boy in the studio right now.
Yeah, it's that shocked me when you said that, Kelly, because I just got my boat title like in December, and I bought it in
a year ago.
May.
Yep. So I don't know. We talked about. I talked about this on maybe Joel's show. To license a semi. So let's say you buy a new semi today. So you buy a new semi today, you get your insurance on it, you're paying a payment on it on your truck. If you are trying to get a license plate and you don't have a new, it's called a prorate account. So you can go to all states in the union. In Minnesota, it's taking 2 to 3 months. So you're going to pay insurance and a truck payment for 2 to 3 months before you can even roll that truck down the road, because that's how far Minnesota is behind. North Dakota, 3 to 4 days. They're amazing.
Now
it's
imagine
so
if you can have that
frustrating.
permit and actually do the things you got to do.
And that's the thing. People say, oh, no, you can get a temporary permit. You can if you have an established account. But if you don't have an established account, it's 2 to 3 months. So you're paying on a truck that you can't even drive. It's so frustrating.
But boy, you can make sure it looks spotless out in that driveway.
You'll have plenty of time to clean it.
Jeez. Ridiculous.
For sure.
Another question comes in. Tyler, how do you become a trainer?
Oh, there's a very extensive criteria that you're going to have to meet. If you go to the FMCSA and put in entry-level driver training requirements, you can find that. You have to have, obviously, if you're going to do it at your facility, you have to have an approved curriculum. Your site that you're going to have, is going to have to be, you're going to have to, part of it is called road and range. So when you first are going to train a driver on obviously driving a truck, you're going to have a space that's not that's off of the road that you can first teach someone how to drive a truck. So you're going to have space in a range. So like in your parking lot, or like let's say the Fargo Dome parking lot would be a range, and then you're going to do on the road testing as well. There's a ton of criteria that you're going to have to meet, but I mean, it's easily done. I mean, obviously people have done it. If you go to the FMCSA and go to entry-level driver trainers requirements, you'll find it.
Very good. That road rage is something. You don't want to have that either in this
range,
industry.
not rage.
I'm going to throw this question out there. I got to
Sure.
get a weather update, but then we'll answer it because I haven't got to the school situation.
Oh, yeah.
Tyler, will this have an effect on schools being able to secure drivers? They already struggle with getting enough. Come back to that question.
Absolutely.
Very good. Kelly Crepu, my guest. We'll get you a weather update from Too Tall Tom Shemansky. We'll wrap up hour number 2 of Afternoons Live next.
All right, thank you, Tom. We've warmed up a degree. 2 below now here at KFGO.
Could keep the conversation going on all day, but I've only got 2 minutes. Kelly Crapo, my guest, and we this question that came in about how is this going to impact securing drivers for school?
Yeah, so the new entry-level driver training will affect school buses because anyone that wants to add a S or a P endorsement, school bus or passenger endorsement, will have to go to the school like we spoke of. So if I just have a Class A or Class B and want to add that endorsement, that's going to affect that as well. And obviously in the news in the last couple of days, the West Fargo School District had to cancel 3 school bus routes due to not having any drivers. So it's not only on the semi or trucking side, it's also on the school bus side or bus side. And, you know, my friends over at Valley Bus are doing the best they can, and they're trying to keep, drivers in buses to get your kids to and from school and school activities. But with everyone in the world with employee shortages, they're having the same thing. And then you if they have to, combine a couple of routes, now you have too many students on the bus and parents are upset about that. Well, they have to choose between getting your kid to school or perhaps maybe cramming them on a bus, which isn't ideal, but they're doing the best they can with shortages as well.
Yeah. Well, again, this comes down to timing not being the most ideal.
Exactly.
And, of course, it seems like it's too late to push this back. Milk is another thing. When we saw that in the news as far as
last week, 2 weeks ago.
Cows are still out there. They're still producing milk.
Yep, and there's farmers that are still milking those cows and getting that milk ready. The problem is we're short truck drivers to get in a truck to deliver the milk. So area schools, or in the state of North Dakota, there was several school districts that were unable to get milk not because, again, the milks weren't producing or farmers weren't milking or getting the milk to the appropriate people. It's because we didn't have truck drivers to get that milk to those schools.
Well, there's a lot to unpack. There's a lot of messages coming in, which tells me we got to do this again.
Okay, if I have to.
Twist your arm
It's
too
my
much?
favorite. I love it here.
All right, last question for you, because
Sure.
we talked about the milk in school. I remember 2% chocolate strawberry. Which one did you go with?
Oh, I was always a chocolate girl.
Yeah, chocolate, hands down.
Strawberry is still a little bit strange to me, but a lot of kids like it, but I was a chocolate
I've never
girl.
had, so I don't have a fair knowledge of it, but no, give me that chocolate.
Safe with chocolate always.
Kelly, it's always fun. We'll do it again
Thank
soon,
you.
all right? Kelly Crepu, we're talking trucking, and we'll do it again because there's so many messages. We just, quite frankly, don't have time. Get you caught up with CBS National News. We'll also check in with Paul Jurgens in that KFGO News Center. I'm Tyler Axis. You're listening to After News Live right here on KFGO. You know, I keep refreshing Twitter to see, is there a head coach announcement for the Minnesota Vikings?
I don't think it's till tomorrow, but that's just
yet.
me.
See, and here's a little layer to this onion that I'll reveal to the rest of you Afternoons Live listening audience. I also want desperately for the Minnesota Vikings to get Jim Harbaugh as your next coach. Not because I want you to go to, say, a Super Bowl and win it. No, because that then frees up the Michigan job. And on the short list for the Michigan head coach is one Matt Rule, who is currently the head coach of the Carolina Panthers. I would like to see Matt Rule not be there anymore. So please, please, Wilfs, do this one favor for your team and for the rest of us.
Oh, my.
Selfish.
Well,
I'm sure you're shocked. I've got
is-
a self-interest in this.
Well, I mean, I guess there is the dominoes fall in these coaching changes, don't they?
They
And,
do. Here's a fact checker at 4 for you before we check in with Paul Jurgens. This is a Facebook post that's been circulated around. The Simpsons predicted Canada's trucker convoy protest. That's the claim? It's not true. The Simpsons have been around so long they've just stumbled into being right about a lot of things. Not the Canada trucker convoy.
Some of it's creepy, though. I'm just going to say.
Some of it's very unusual. That is for sure. All right, here, I'll get you caught up with KFGO News. Let's talk about that whole initiated measure, changing that to 60%. Who's funding it? We'll talk about it next.
KFGO News, mostly sunny to below zero. A Valley City man charged with attempted murder, burglary, and violation of a domestic protection order has been sentenced to just over 6 years in prison. Alex Meridian shot another man last February in Valley City. The victim recovered and asked for leniency, saying he believes Meridian is a good man who made a mistake but needs to undergo mental health treatment. Barnes County State's Attorney Tonya Duffy asked for 8 years in prison. Police have not established a motive yet in a shooting outside a suburban Minneapolis school that left one student dead and another critically injured. The students were shot outside South Education Center in Richfield yesterday. Police have arrested 2 suspects who they say were part of a fight between 5 students. A 15-year-old student was killed and a 17-year-old student was critically injured. A 3rd student was hurt. The parents of a University of Missouri student from Minnesota are suing a fraternity after their son suffered serious brain injuries during a pledge party. Daniel Santulli's blood alcohol content was more than 6 times the limit for driving when he was found unresponsive in a car in a hospital. The parents' lawsuit says Santulli, who is from Eden Prairie, remains unresponsive with a significant brain injury. The Twin Cities sheriff, who was convicted of drunken driving, says he won't seek re-election in November. Hennepin County Dave Hutchinson has faced calls for his resignation for crashing his county-issued sport utility vehicle in December after drinking at a conference in Alexandria. His blood alcohol content was nearly twice the legal limit. Hutchinson said initially that he had no plans to step down. Hutchinson was convicted of driving while intoxicated and agreed as part of a plea deal to undergo random drug and alcohol testing. He was going 126 miles an hour shortly before he rolled the SUV on I-94. The U.S. men's national soccer team is playing a World Cup qualifying match against Honduras tonight at Allianz Field in St. Paul. Both teams and fans will brave below-zero wind chills and single-digit temperatures. The Americans are heavy favorites against Honduras, which has already been eliminated from a spot in the World Cup. Fargo-Moorhead wind chill warning going into effect at 6 this evening, and it'll be in effect until noon tomorrow. A clear night and very cold. KFGO meteorologist Tom Shavansky is expecting a low of about 30 below zero. Tomorrow just 7 below for a high, mostly sunny. We should be partly sunny on Friday then, 5 degrees, near 26 Saturday, partly sunny, windy, with a chance of light snow, and Sunday near 8 degrees, partly sunny. Fargo-Moorhead mostly sunny, it's 2 below. Paul Jurgens News Radio, KFGO.
Can you imagine playing a soccer game in St. Paul
No.
I mean, you think about play football in this weather because people are saying, well, look, you've got the Vikings. You think about that Seahawks game, the coldest game ever, played outdoors. You think about Green Bay. That's a part of the outdoor environment. You think about the pads, the heaters, all that. There's a little bit more protection to the elements. I don't know how you add layers, do all that in soccer. I think we're going to find out tonight. And you think about coming from Honduras up to Minnesota on February 2nd. You won't catch me there. And I know that I'm actually surprised because I haven't been on this, I don't want to say bandwagon, because I haven't got on to the whole soccer thing, but I've been running into more and more people right here in the Fargo-Moorhead area that are all about soccer.
Wow.
Yeah. Which
they got into the European League, right? So they're watching on TV more. I have a couple friends like that, twin brothers who always send us group texts like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, like I don't know how it works. I mean, why not have the time stop when the time has ended? But that's a conversation for another time because I want to pick up where we left off yesterday. When that has to do about constitutional measures, because it's not just candidates you're voting for. You've got to say in how your state, your city, all that do things. Sometimes you have that direct vote to do so. One of those is being there's going to be an attempt to critique it here in North Dakota. One of those that has been watching this is Rick Guion. He is with North Dakota Voters First. We've had him on a number of times to talk about redistricting, was instrumental in making sure that you knew what the plans were, and he's been following this and is going to give us an update. Rick, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing well. Tyler, how are you?
I'm doing well as well. I forget, are you one of those soccer fans?
I'm not.
Okay.
I'm more of a football fan, although the Vikings were really frustrating this year. I heard you talking about Mike Zimmer there, and so I quit watching for a while until the playoffs, and then I was hoping that the 49ers and Bengals would make it to the Super Bowl because it would remind me of the 1989 Super Bowl, which was really iconic in the 80s. So football's not really working out for me this year. Maybe I should switch to soccer.
Yeah, I don't know why you struck me as a soccer fan. I don't know, but I apologize for putting you in that stereotype. This is one of those, but we'll move on. And I apologize. I do hope that you get Jim Harbaugh, and that's a whole other conversation as well. I wanted to have you on, being the executive director of North Dakota Voters First. There was an attempt to change how many votes are needed to change the Constitution in North Dakota. I know that they don't quite have all the signatures yet filed, but when you have a sponsoring committee that's protect North Dakota's Constitution, it catches your attention. I'm curious, where do you land on this?
Yeah, and they have a nice sounding name, but don't let the name fool you. We talk about a lot of voting rights these days. It's a real hot button issue. This is something to watch in North Dakota. They wanted to make it harder for you to pass constitutional initiated measures in North Dakota. This is the people's check on the government. This is the people's right, Article 3 of the state constitution, powers to the people to be able to bring ideas to the ballot box when the legislature isn't doing their job. That happens sometimes. As you know, Tyler, you talk about the legislature a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're trying to hinder the ability for people to pass these initiated measures, make it harder. And we feel that that's damaging to the state's people-powered initiated measure process.
I find it ironic, and I'll give equal opportunity if, the chairman of this group and Mike Haugen wants to come on and debate this, by all means, but they're complaining about a process that they're going to fully try to take advantage of to change the process going forward when it comes to the percentage of people needed to pass a constitutional amendment. And if I recall, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Rick, you've never shied from doing that before, does that include changing the required signatures as well?
No, and that's
Okay.
the thing. That's the check on this, and that's what makes it difficult. And I think they're now finding out that it's difficult. They need 31,164 signatures to get this on the ballot. That's no easy task. And that's the check on this whole thing. But then to add on top of that, 60% is nuts. But at the same time, they want 50% plus one, a simple majority, to make it 60%. So we feel that they're fairly hypocritical there.
Well, that and there's other measures. In fact, I'm going to use this text that comes in to springboard into addressing what I was just to say about what I think is perhaps some hypocrisy. If you all want to join the conversation, 35270. iConsultants of North Dakota is our text club. And Rick, you've addressed this question before, but I think it's a fair question, to be honest. Tyler, who funds your guest Rick's group? And they're referring to North Dakota Voters First. Obviously, you're an advocacy organization here in North Dakota, but they're wondering, where does funding come from your group?
Yeah, and I've been very honest with that. We get out-of-state funding, and we get some in-state funding. We just sent out a fundraising letter to North Dakotans a few months ago, and just like this measure, a lot of their funding comes from the State Chamber of Commerce, which means that their members are out-of-state banks, out-of-state energy companies. If you look at who is involved with the State Chamber of Commerce, a lot of those organizations and big businesses from out of state. And so I'm not really sure that argument rings loud in this case. This is more about the people and what the people want, people's rights, voting rights, and that sort of thing.
Rick, what's the driving factor behind this?
Well, I think some of it, and to be honest with you, is that out-of-state money argument. But again, there is some hypocrisy on that side involved in this too. And so, I mean, I understand that argument, but at the same time, let's be fair about it.
Well, and I would add that gets thrown out anytime that there's any effort to do anything, unless it's into their own campaign, whether that's this initiated measure, which I'm looking at, for example, Morning in America. That's from Cheyenne, Wyoming. $85,000 already deposited before they even got this thing on the ballot. You mentioned the chamber, $150,000. That's the North Dakota Greater Chamber of Commerce. And the thing is, I get along with some of the people that I've seen donate. I just think they're wrong in this aspect because, as you said, it is so dang difficult the way it is currently to do things. There have been things that have passed and added to the Constitution that I agree with. There's been things that have been passed that I disagree with. Then on the flip side, there are things that I wish would have that weren't, because you know what? There's a chance that voters, you know what? They've got their say. I don't know that you have to add it to 60%. This seems unnecessary. And you mentioned that it's out of state, but I've got to come back to there are specifics that have been passed that they don't like because it checks on what they're able to do out in Bismarck.
Well, that's entirely right. And, you know, their thing here, because the chamber's involved, obviously has to do with economics, probably keeping taxes low. Byron Dorgan and Ken Conrad led an effort in 1980 to establish an oil extraction tax, and that's why we have a legacy fund now. Most people in North Dakota, I think, like that we have a savings account. And so some of these things can really be beneficial. The people paying me from out of state are interested in democracy issues. They're not interested in economic issues and forcing, you know, their agenda on folks. And my board, by the way, is a bunch of regular North Dakotans from throughout the state. So, I mean, that argument, it can get really interesting real fast. But at the same time, like, this is the initiative to be able to bring things to the ballot box. It's people's right to do. Article 3 of the state constitution, it's clear as day. Powers to the people. And that's a really cool thing about North Dakota, is our ability to bring things to the ballot box.
Rick, I'm curious. So let's say that this group led by Mike Haugen gets they get enough signatures. It's going to be on the ballot. And I know you have got a group, but I can think about others that have stood up against these attempts as well. On the Republican side, I'm thinking about Dustin Goverlow, for example. I mean, are there plans in case this does end up on the ballot to say, look, we're going to have an opposition committee?
Oh, there will definitely be an opposition committee. You know, that's already being formed. It's nonpartisan, but I guess you could say it's multi-partisan as well. If you want to, everyone from progressives to libertarians, you know, regular Democrats, moderate Republicans, have all signed on board to oppose this thing. And you'll see some big names. It's I don't think once people find out what this is and it's hampering and hindering the ability to pass things at the ballot box, once people really find out what this is and what the impetus is behind it, they will vote no.
Rick, yesterday I had the League of Women Voters on. I know that they extended an invitation out to both pro and against, and we're going to do the same. We have you obviously in opposition. We will reach out to the Protect North Dakota's Constitution Committee and ask for their time as well. Are you taking part in that League of Women Voters thing on Friday?
Yes, we are. Okay. I'll be giving a presentation. I'll try not to be too boring. I know these issues can get a little complicated, but yes, Sons of Norway at noon. If you don't want to come in person, the League of Women Voters of the Red River Valley does stream it on their Facebook page, so you can watch it there as well.
All right. Rick, I'm going to let you go. Is there anything else that you want to get up before I do?
Can't think of anything. Nope.
Okay. Well, with that, I'll let you get after it. All right, man. You take care. We'll chat again soon.
Sounds good, sir.
All right. Rick Guion, he's with North Dakota Voters First. And we will, whether that's Mike Haugen, if he wants to come on these number one rated airwaves of KFGO, we can offer that. If not, like I said, there are people whom I get along with, I consider friends, part of this group, one of them being the chair of the North Dakota Greater Chamber of Commerce and Eric Spencer. I've worked well with them. And if he wants to come on, we'll extend that invitation to get that equal side out as well. Some of these messages coming your way. Afternoon News Live rolls on next. KFGO time is 4:23 Wednesday afternoon. Coming up after Afternoons Live, you got, of course, the Drive Time News, Couch Potato Radio, Hennessy on Hockey. That means there's a lot of Derek Hansen who's behind the board right now coming your way. You'll be on this side of the room.
Yeah, it's one thing, when we got people with time off and we're kind of getting in here in the winter months, and I got time off coming. So
I know.
I'm scratching off the days like I'm in prison.
I'm not casting stones because tomorrow it's my Friday.
That's right.
Yeah, so here's the thing. It's a staycation. No plans.
Yeah.
So Thomas Beadle's going to be here Friday. Thanks, Thomas Beadle. State Treasurer of North Dakota. Monday, Tuesday, Jim Shaw. I'm gonna kick back, put my feet up.
So you're
Those
doing
are
this
the best vacations.
in February?
Well, I mean, some of us didn't plan ahead before deciding to take. I mean, it's been on the calendar for a little while, but don't you just want that time to maybe just wake up a little later, have that good old cup of coffee?
Yeah, I usually in the summer I do that. Yes, I take a staycation and at my parents' house. That happens to be on a lake.
What are you just yelling up, "Mom, the meatloaf" type thing? Or
Yeah,
what?
no. It's I have my own little shanty I hang out with. A lot of people. Yeah, so that's the good place to do it. I never got that last summer.
Hang out with my parents in the basement.
They don't see me much. I sit out at the little man cave right next to the lake, and that's where I hang out.
Oh God,
so.
doesn't that sound just swell?
No, I don't think about it much this time of year.
No. When I was at the boat show on Saturday with Scott Brewer, Kyle Agri, and I'm hearing the sound system on some of those pontoons now.
Yep.
I was saying you could be on one side of Pelican and be listening to the same Dr. Dre song on the other side of the pond.
Usually mine is people. Now I hope we have baseball because that's usually what I have it on. Is I kind of time my pontoon rides around baseball here on KFGO. So. Because the NFL is so successful, we're just going to have the baseball owners say, nah, let's not start the season on time. Nobody wants that.
Yeah, expect some delays, was Manfred. Yeah. Messages in about our conversation, 35270. Tyler, they need to get rid of the 60% to pass school bond issues. Then if this isn't any good either, or it can't be good in one, can't be bad. I'm fine with removing the 60% threshold for the bonds, the school bonds, because you have got, and I forget which district it is in Williston. I apologize for those of you streaming us worldwide at KFGO.com or wherever you can take us with you on your handheld device, your smartphone, KFGO mobile app. But you had repeated attempts to pass a bond, and they would get so close to that 60%, but they couldn't get over that threshold, and it delayed, and it delayed, and it delayed. And then things get more expensive. I'm fine. Get it down to just a regular majority for the school bonds. It's the argument that is being made that you're being duped by out-of-state special interests. That's the claim they're going to make, and why they want to make it more difficult for you to have a say in how your state constitution is impacted. And I just think the level of hypocrisy and all of that is something. It's not new to this issue with this group. I mean, I can go on down the line of any given election and point that out. But the thing is, not everything that's been well-funded from out-of-state groups has passed. I mean, that's just the fact of the situation here. So to fear-monger you and basically say, well, you don't know as much as us, and we're the ones that are out bumping elbows with the legislature. So we're going to go ahead and use that special interest, that money from out-of-state, and we'll lobby out there for our groups, but you shouldn't have that same ability to lobby at the ballot box on a constitutional measure. It just shows a little bit of arrogance on top of hypocrisy. That's where I'm coming from. And I will allow, like I said, there's people that are backing this that I consider friends. They're probably pounding their keyboards right now in anger. That's fine. Or shooting me a text. I'll answer it as well. But it's just the arguments don't hold up. Because at some point, you got to take a pause and look in the mirror and say, well, geez, if I'm getting $85,000 from a group called Morning in America from Wyoming, that's special out of state, or you got to call this stuff out. And we'll continue to do that between now and if they get it on the ballot. And we'll allow them an opportunity to respond as well. Final half hour, whatever you want to talk about, I'm here for you. Phone lines are open at 237-5948. That's Laney's studio line. They sponsor that. And, of course, the Eye Consultants of North Dakota Text Club at 35270. You are listening to Afternoons Live. You're either got us on 790 AM or 104.7 FM KFGO.
This hour news and weather is brought to you by Laney's, your one-stop solution for all of your plumbing, heating, cooling, electrical, duct cleaning, and sewer and drain needs. Laney's, nobody does it better.
Partly sunny Fargo-Moorhead, 3 below zero. I'm Paul Juergens. 2 arrests have been made in the shooting outside a Richfield, Minnesota school yesterday afternoon. A gun was also recovered during searches of 2 locations in Minneapolis. 1 student died and another is in critical condition. KFGO News correspondent Bill Warner has reaction from top state leaders.
Governor Tim Walz says, quote, "We need more than words. We need action to get guns off the streets and prevent violent crime in the first place." The governor says he remains committed to working with officials at all levels of government to seek needed change. On the Republican side, Senate Education Committee Chairman Roger Chamberlain from Lino Lake says it goes without saying that this is a horrific tragedy. Chamberlain says as the investigation proceeds, quote, "The Senate stands ready to support the families involved, their classmates, the school and staff, and law enforcement however we can."
Police have now disclosed the shooting took place during an argument between 5 students. The person killed was a 15-year-old boy. A 17-year-old classmate is in critical condition. Another student was injured. The 2 men arrested are 18 and 19. A Republican-controlled South Dakota House committee has decided not to consider a bill from Governor Kristi Noem that would ban nearly all abortions. It's a major setback to a top item on the Republican governor's agenda. It would have been similar to the private enforcement of a Texas law and banned abortions once medical professionals can detect fetal cardiac activity. 3 below zero, this is KFGO News. Three below, this is KFGO News. Fire has damaged a home in the Buena Vista mobile home park in Fargo. The fire was reported around 3:30 this morning at 4614 San Juan Drive South. Battalion Chief Joe Manchin was on scene. He said one person who was in the mobile home was already outside when fire crews arrived.
First unit in, saw flames coming from the backside of the trailer, pulled the line, quickly put that part of the fire out, the main body of the fire. It looks like we kept most of the fire out of the trailer. Little smoke damage inside. We're not sure if the trailer is going to be habitable or not yet. The trailer house doesn't take much damage.
Manchin says it's too soon to determine the cause. However, he says many times with temperatures so cold, mobile home fires are caused by heating pipes or heat tape that are beneath them. Hennepin County Sheriff Dave Hutchinson, who pleaded guilty to drunken driving, will not seek re-election in November after all. Hutchinson has been facing mounting criticism and calls to step down since he admitted to driving drunk and crashing his county-issued SUV in the early morning hours December 8th on I-94 near Alexandria. He was fined and sentenced to 2 years probation. The trial of 3 former Minneapolis police officers charged with violating George Floyd's rights was abruptly delayed today after one of the defendants tested positive for COVID-19. The judge says the court is in recess until Monday. The officer who tested positive was not named by the court. Medical cannabis patients in Minnesota will be able to smoke, vaporize, or cook raw flower and buds beginning next month. The state is recommending registered patients contact their dispensary pharmacist to get pre-approved for dry flowers and pre-rolled marijuana before March 1st. Patients can get up to a 90-day supply of smokable cannabis or of various strains and THC levels. The Department of Health expects patient enrollment to double or triple with the changes. Fargo-Moorhead, a wind chill warning going into effect at 6 this evening until noon tomorrow. A very cold night, clear, and about 30 below zero for the actual overnight air temperature. Mostly sunny tomorrow, 7 below the high. Then Friday, near 5 degrees, partly sunny. 26 Saturday, partly sunny. Windy with a chance of light snow. 8 above. Sunday, partly sunny. Fargo-Moorhead, partly sunny. It's 3 below. Paul Juergens, News Radio, KFGO.
"25 minutes left of Afternoons Live." I'll tell you a story about beer signs when we come back. You collect?
No, I don't.
I started to. I found a little gem, a little Spuds McKenzie. I'll tell you that a little bit. What's your favorite beer sign or memorabilia? You send those in 35270. Or you can call me. Laney studio line is 237-5948. Final half hour. Afternoons Live is underway right here on KFGO. Sometimes you read a headline and you just say, well, yeah, here's one for you. Jimmy Garoppolo seeking, quote, place where they want to win.
No.
Or,
I don't want the pressure of winning. I just want to.
You know what? I want to go to a team, but I want to go to a team that wants to win. Does that have to be a headline?
So do you think when he's answering it like that, he just says something like he's saying it because he doesn't want to name names of teams? Like, well, if I get traded,
I don't want to go to Carolina. I saw that whole situation.
I mean, right.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to go to a mess like they have right now with the Texans, that type of thing.
Not going to Miami after all that either. They're not going to pay me to lose.
Right.
I just see it's funny. A competitor wants to go to a place that wins.
What a concept.
Yeah, it is just a silly way of what you want to. That's not exactly clickbait.
No.
35270. Okay, so this weekend, I'm not going to tell you what establishment because there's more signs there that might be coming home with me at some point. But you walk in and the place there. That's one thing. If you have a place that has old traditional beer signs, and they're not all made equal, let me tell you that. There is something about the Hams beer signs that are great.
Oh, yeah.
Especially when you have the scenic ones. I saw one that is hanging from the chain, like the light, and it spins around while the scene's spinning. I've never seen it before.
Oh, nice.
Oh, it was beautiful. But that sounds like the owner, you would have to negotiate, then it wasn't going to be cheap. But I found a Spuds McKenzie Bud Light sign.
Nice.
Remember the old Spuds McKenzie
I
commercials?
do very well. I got a good story about that, too.
Oh, do tell.
8th grade, Red River Valley Fair.
Okay.
I may have spent too much money trying to get a Spuds McKenzie stuffed animal, and I might have heard about it when I get home with my mother. So,
Well, it was because it was a dog. It wasn't about the Bud Light aspect of it. But yeah, so the Spuds McKenzie, just because of the, I mean, everybody knows Spuds McKenzie. Everybody knows the Hams beer and the song. And so it's like when you see something like that, you're gonna buy it, right? If it's for sale. I did. So I brought that home.
Nice.
Yeah, that's just one of the many. That's the thing. It wasn't
Is
just
it in
that
your
one.
living room now? Or
Yeah, right next to the PAP sign.
Yeah.
The neon.
I'm trying to think. Yeah, I don't see your significant other letting that happen.
No, right now it's currently in the garage.
I grew up with a 8-pound walleye stuffed in my living room, and I look at my mother now. And I said, "You really let that happen?" That I just don't see that happening these days.
No,
maybe in the garage, but yeah, on wood paneling. I'm not even
It really
kidding.
brings the room together,
Yeah,
though.
right.
We get to the phone lines and talk to Dennis. Dennis, how you doing today?
Good. I got a question. I have been searching for decades for a particular sign, beer sign. All I remember was there was 2 cartoon characters dressed like house painters.
Okay, that's all you remember, Dennis?
That's all I remember.
Okay, well, I'm going to do.
I thought it was Hams, but it wasn't.
Okay. I'm writing the notes down as I speak, and I have my word because you can be watching me do it on YouTube. Painter's cartoon beer sign. I'm going to do the Google, Dennis, and see if I can find something for you.
All right, thank you.
All right, thanks for calling on in. Dennis, he's putting you all to work out there. If you got an answer, I see Derek Hanson's already got his phone
I'm
up.
doing my Google search. I don't see anything like that on the old images. Huh. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, if somebody out there might. I'll have to get our buddy from southern Minnesota that has the world's largest collection of Hams beer memorabilia. If you missed that conversation, go to KFGO, go to the podcast page. You know what? Go wherever you get your podcasts. You can look that up because the collection he has built there. And that's when I was at this establishment finding, because they've got a large collection of Hams themselves. Just not, particular. The one I'm still in awe of. In fact, I took a video of it and sent it to some of my Hams drinking buddies, of which there are still Hams drinkers out there. And see, here's how you know advertising works, Derek. Because you walk in, you see all the Hams beer signs, and you choose to order one. And one is all you need when it comes to Hams. It was quickly back to the Busch Lights after the one Hams.
Yeah, it's usually how it goes. You go back to what you know.
Yeah.
It's a very good point. Yeah. When growing up, we had all the mirror ones with actual pictures on them, right?
Like the Budweiser ones.
Right, in the Swedish bikini team. Was that Milwaukee's? No, who was that? That was not. Who was the Swedish bikini team? Something that I don't think would be appropriate today.
No, a lot of those old tin signs that have like volleyball teams, probably not. Or race car drivers. Or I guess they weren't drivers. They were just standing provocative next to said race car. It was probably Bud Ice. That's what I said. It's probably a Bud Ice sign. 237-5948. Let's see if Gino's got any answers for it. Gino, how you doing?
I'm doing just fine. You know what it is? It's Stanley and Albert, and it's Grain Belt Beer. Been a long time of brewing.
Grain Belt Beer. Dennis, I hope you're listening. Gino, I appreciate the update. Do you have one?
No, but I've watched the commercials since I was a kid. My dad drank Grain Belt Beer, so.
All right. Gino, you know what you're talking about, buddy. I appreciate you answering that. You take care, all right?
All right, thank you.
All right.
Stanley and Albert.
Stanley and Albert. There we go.
Huh.
Appreciate it.
I learned something today.
Yeah, that's what I enjoy when we just open it up and you have callers that call in, ask questions. I'd say 8 times out of 10, somebody out there listening has the answer, and then they call in, and then we just connect the wisdom of our fellow KFGO listeners with those that have questions. We got some more messages coming in. One asking about the snow cross, perhaps. Tyler, Grain Belt. Girl in the Barley Field pitcher. I'm unfamiliar. So you got Grain Belt, you got Budweiser, you got Hams.
Yeah.
Stroh's was another one that had a lot of signs.
Yeah, Stroh's. I mean, Stroh's is a big beer, and what they did in the late '80s is they had 30 packs. They were like the first of the 30.
First?
Yeah, and that was a huge deal. Yeah, my dad bought Stroh's right away. So, and it went away. It was kind of, can you still find that anywhere?
Stroh's?
Yeah.
I have not seen a Stroh's anywhere aside from a sign.
Okay.
Or like one of the old, Pop Tops. I've not seen anybody have it in a liquor cabinet or in the fridge or anything.
Really?
If somebody out there knows where you can, because I would try it.
Yeah, I
There's
liked it back in the day.
Yeah, a lot of the old beers that I would definitely try, because now you can get a variety of anything. You get your sours, your IPAs. Give me some of that good old hearty 1960 brewed company. It's something that just, what?
Right.
They took it straight from the field. They put it in that tin, and then guess what? You drank it a couple hours later.
Yeah, I mean, the way it looked just freshly out of Laverne and Shirley days with
Yeah.
Shots Brewing. I mean, that type of beer is what you're thinking of,
That's
right?
exactly
So-
what I'm looking for. If you know
Right.
where you can point us to, 35270. Swedish bikini team was Old Mill. Old Mill hockey.
It
comes
was
in. Yeah,
Old Mill.
Good,
Okay.
Good guess out there. Thanks for you guys know a lot about your beer memorabilia. Get you a little bit of a break here. When we come back, we'll see Derek Hansen. He's not going anywhere. He's got the Drive Time News. He's
Where
got
else would I be?
Couch Potato Radio. Hennessy on Hockey. You are listening to KFGO Fargo. As cold as Bud Ice.
Oh, nice. I have a story of Bud Ice in college because it has a little bit more alcohol in it.
Correct.
And it's smooth as anything else. And I remember
Yeah,
we went, ironically, Eric's gone. We went to a Johnson's Barn. So,
oh, really?
Yeah. So
you got on the inside? Because I've never been. I was blocking the door.
And it was not my fault because I just like to casually go up there, whatever, and it knocked me on my butt, and I wasn't expecting it at all. I mean, because not that I went out to get hammered, I just was having a few beers, and before you knew it, it caught up with me. It was bad. Now I'm 22 years old at the time,
Right.
but
So that was like your second time ever having beer, right?
yes. Considering I talked about the Stroh's 30 packs, and they ended in 1989. Let's not do the math. I mentioned I'm 49 in a month. Okay. Yeah.
Math's not my strong suit, so I'm not going to do that for you.
I graduated high school in 91. What's the statute of limitations?
It's long
Jesse
past.
Grable.
Yep. Long gone. Don't you worry about that. Like this. Warm Stroh's swiped out of Grandpa's kitchen takes me back.
Yeah, that's maybe where I found that nectar when I was...
Same. Apparently, we all grew up the same around here because I remember Grandpa's Kitchen, PBR.
Yeah,
that was the first.
See, I'm convinced my dad bought Schmidt because he knew I didn't like it, so I would never steal it. But they have the great cans with the walleyes and the pheasants.
That's also, if you're going to have people over, or if you're going somewhere, I guess is the way I'd put it. Because if you're having people over, then you want to provide. I mean, you can BYOB. But if you're going somewhere and you know that there's going to be people with hands reaching in coolers, you get the stuff that you know no one else is going to want to drink.
Yeah.
Yeah. That way it's...
That's a great idea.
Yeah. So that way if you can keep count and you can see who's got the unusual beer cans around. Like, hey, I wasn't over there. So you get the stuff that you know only you are going to drink.
You'll get the popular stuff for everyone else, and then you go get whatever you
if
like.
I'm going to your shop or Quonset, if I'm not expecting to be sharing with people, I'm not bringing a 30-pack of Busch Light. That's all I'm saying.
I like it.
It'll be a Shinerbach, which is a good beer if you have not. I believe Schlitz has a classic recipe comes in.
Oh, interesting.
Got a lot of messages coming in. I appreciate that. 35270. Tyler, my dad always drank Schmidt beer or Olympia or Schlitz and sometimes Hams and Grain Belt. So not picky is what you're saying.
Yeah.
I appreciate
I like Hams wasn't bad, though, I don't think. Was it?
No, it's heavier.
Right.
It's a taste. There are...
Well, that sounds like Schmidt then. I mean,
so
not the Schmitz, the original Schmidt.
I've had my fair share of Hams. I've not had that.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with a little pig's eye comes in. I'm not familiar with that. Are you?
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan. Well, I think pig's eye kind of came out to, let's face it, at the time, a lot of these craft beers, the way you taste them, it would have been kind of what we would have referred to in the beers when you were younger as like skunked, right? I mean,
skunk.
And that's the way I felt with pig's eye. But a lot of people like that. So
you couldn't tell if this was refrigerated then warmed up then refrigerated because it all tastes the same the entire way.
Exactly.
Okay.
That was my thing. There's another one that was a Rough Rider beer that was here. Oh my heavens! Yeah, I for me, I just don't know. I just get queasy thinking about it. But I wonder if that's still around.
Tyler, we poor high school guys bought Buckhorn. Nobody bummed one from us. See, there is a method to the madness. If you do not want to be of the giving kind, you got to be selfish every now and then. Regular listeners, that, God, I was saying how much I want Jim Harbaugh to be the Minnesota Vikings coach out of selfishness because I want a different head coach in Carolina. So, yes, I would buy things that, even if it gives me that bitter beer face, which which company did the bitter beer face commercials?
Oh, that's a good question. Someone will help us out with that.
35270.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because those are funny. Anyway, while you're telling me the bitter beer face commercial or somebody's calling in, I was going to see what's coming up on the drive, but now we got people calling in to 237-5948. Hams Draft and Schmidt Draft were good. A beer case for $6 as I'm old and bought it underage. No judgment. Statute of limitations we have passed as well. Derek Hansen, what do you got for me?
Different Dennis is going to help us out here, I think.
Oh, Dennis, you're on Afternoons Live. Thanks for calling, man.
Hey, yeah, it's great to listen to you guys. I'm driving up from Sioux Falls towards Grand Forks, and I love the station, but this goes back to my high school, too. I remember having a few of the old Milwaukee Lights, Red Dog.
Oh, Red Dog, yes. The red beers were a huge thing in the late 90s, yes.
Yeah, and then obviously the girls like the Purple Passion. I mean, I'm going way back. But,
yeah.
You know what?
This was very good conversation.
Dennis, I appreciate you adding to the conversation. You drive safe out there. I appreciate that. The Boone's Farm.
Yeah.
Keystone, was it Keystone Light that had the bitter beer face?
That's it.
Is it?
I think you're right. Yeah.
There's a lot of exclamation. Here's where you knew the divide between Towner County and Benson County, where I'm from.
Oh, yeah.
Can-Do, they drink Keystone Light. So if you saw any cans of Keystone around, you said, who from Can-Do is here? Because we were Busch Light drinkers.
Yeah. Well, I can see that. Yeah. I mean, I just talked to the new Fire Hall Liquors in Barnesville. I did that remote on Saturday, and they said, it's the Stone 30 backs and the Busch Light. That's ready to go.
Yeah.
So
sometimes you just need to have the quantity, not necessarily the quality. But you know what? You can get it all wrapped in one in the 30-pack of Busch Light. That's all I'm saying. What's coming up on the Drive Time News?
We'll get a look at what's going on as far as the financials. Brady Brunsville is going to give us that on what happened today on Wall Street, and also give you a little traffic and weather together. Keep you updated on that with all the cold temperatures, and Tutal will have that a little bit later in the show. Matt English with sports. I haven't heard anything with the new Vikings coach at all, right? So we have that going. That's the good news.
Yeah, I keep refreshing for both our sanities.
Well, I kind of got the word from all the beat writers I was talking to that it would more or less be tomorrow. So we shall see. I mean, if it is going to happen at all. So that's what we're kind of looking at.
Paul Ice just did confirm by pulling up the video that it was, in fact, Keystone Light was the bit
of beer face. All right. Thank you, Paulie.
Yeah, thank you, Paulie. Yeah. Thank you to everybody joining the conversation today. I tell you what, tomorrow, let's do it all over again. We got audibles, perhaps, maybe. I know we got Spencer Worth, the meat dude. We got Tanner Turney, Devil's Eye Tourism, so much more tomorrow. But that's it for me today. I'm Tyler Axis, your host here on Afternoons Live. I will be back for more of the show tomorrow. Till then, you take care of yourselves. I'll check in right here on KFGO.